Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the KONTAINEROZ podcast. The podcast is sponsored by PortPro, the leading operating system for Drayage carriers. Schedule a demo today, like right now, at portpro.io. And don't forget to mention KONTAINEROZ for a little hookup, little discount. All right. In the studio today, I got Walker Banks in the house. What's up?
How you doing, brother? Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming.
I like the intro. That's well rehearsed.
Yeah, after 60 episodes, I better have it down.
You're already at 60.
This is 61.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
I should have got in before Matt then. I could have been number 60.
Yeah, that's like a cool number, huh? 60.
That is.
Yeah.
That is. You're going to be in Joe Rogan's world at some point. I mean, he's north of 1,000.
Got thousands to go, huh?
Yeah, man. You'll get there.
Yeah. But 61 is pretty cool. 6 plus 1 is 7, and that's a lucky number. Right?
That is a lucky number.
Yeah, there it is. So tell me a little about yourself.
Yeah, well, again, thanks for having me. I've been really looking forward to this. As you alluded to in your intro and in our testing, I am PortPro's VP of Strategy and Business Development, and it's been great, working with you and the rest of the team. For your audience, for your listeners, I'm still fairly new at this point. This is only my second month with the company. But it's exciting times. I'm grateful for the opportunity. It's cool to be here. There's a lot of interesting things going on. I think the company is well positioned to help transform the industry from the owner operator level all the way up to the trucking company and up through the 3PL and on the broker level. We're working on a lot of really cool things that I think are going to be quite transformative.
What else? Maybe let's go back in history a little bit.
Sure.
How was Walker's childhood? Where do you come from? What's?
Yeah, that's good. No, it's a good question. Happy to talk about it. So I'm born and raised in Orange County. That's where I grew up. Still live there today. My parents were really hardworking people. My dad was involved in the professional sailing world for a really long time. And took me on offshore racing trips when I was really young. And I remember my mom and I traveling all over the world to go meet him in Hawaii and Tahiti and in Europe when he was racing over there. My mom was she worked in corporate America for 35 years for in the entertainment industry for a movie studio. On the HR side, but she had a really fabulous career, and I had really great parents. And grew up in Orange County, and then moved across the country to Florida to complete my undergraduate program at a small liberal arts college called Eckerd College. Shout out to my Eckerd College friends who are going to listen to this and give me a hard time about the podcast.
Yeah.
But really great place to go to school. Fabulous weather. Fabulous people. Really cool international relations, global affairs program, which is what I went there to study, because my dream as a kid was to either join the Navy as either a surface warfare officer or as an intelligence officer. Unfortunately, I never made it in. But after that, I wanted to go work for the State Department as a foreign service officer.
Foreign service officer?
Yeah. So
what do they do or what?
So they're basically the guys that work under an ambassador for a given ally of the United States, and they conduct the foreign policy of the United States, right? So they're working with colleagues on the other side, let's say in Japan or in Europe, and talking through and discussing how the two countries are going to work together to solve whatever crisis is going on. Basically foreign relations, right? So if I'm a foreign service officer for the United States, I'm working alongside the foreign service officer from France, let's say, and we're working on issues related to commerce, economics, human rights, human trafficking, war, right? It's a pretty big deal going on in Europe right now, so a lot of the foreign service officers' attention is directed to that. So, anyways, that was my dream. I even did a couple of study programs at the United Nations before I got my first job in supply chain and logistics. I spent a lot of time applying to go work at the State Department, at the Navy, and at the United Nations. Funny way how things work out, right? Because I ended up going back to school to get a master's in international relations and global affairs while I was at GeoStamp, which is kind of how I ended up at PortPro. For your listeners, your audience who don't know, GeoStamp was a small software startup that partnered with HTA to measure wait time and delays at the marine terminals here in LA and Long Beach.
Yeah.
Really amazing family friend of mine, mentor of mine, really. Who's been in trucking for 35 years, fabulous man. He's who ultimately recruited and hired me as employee one to work at GeoStamp. And I'll never forget this, right? The customer was the trucking company, right? They handed me a list of basically like 10,000 phone numbers and emails, laid it on my desk in the cubicle, and basically said, hey, we've got the product, right? The software product. Start calling.
Go find customers.
Go find customers, right? Exactly right. And I did that for 6-7 months. My goal was, I had my own cell phone and my own computer. The company was making there was zero revenue.
You were a sales guy then there.
Basically, yeah, I was. Yeah.
How many calls a day?
I was targeting about 50 calls a day for the first 6
calls?
months. Yeah.
Okay, you called me right now. Hello. What's this?
It's Walker Banks calling from PortPro now. And I would pitch the product, and I would walk through the value add, and
what was the pitch? Come on.
Yeah.
Hello.
I'll give you the PortPro pitch now.
All right.
But it's not going to be as good as Daniel's pitch. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
We're just trying to take some pointers right there for those people out there trying to make a sale.
Oh, you
got that experience. Huh?
I give so much credit to salespeople because I don't think I'm very good at it. And it was trial by fire. I mean, I remember people picking up the phone being like, "Who the hell are you?" Like, click, hang up, being like, "Don't call this effing number again." I'm done. Just don't. And finally, we got. This was after a couple months. We got like one potential customer to commit to a demo.
After months?
Took me a couple months.
Wow.
We had the founders kind of working in the background that had they had got some demos in place, and we were pitching the product, and finally we landed our first customer, and it grew from there. I was at GeoStamp for 6 years. I was employee one. We grew in revenue. We ultimately brought in a CEO. We brought in a chief product officer. We hired another sales guy. At one point, who is still over there. He's kind of now he kind of runs the show, if you will.
Okay.
We grew to at one point between two products that we were working on. I think it was like 12 developers, a couple QA guys, an architect, and the company ultimately was fairly successable. A niche product, but a really important service for HTA, for trucking companies, and ultimately the terminals were our customers as well. I think everybody in the industry, at least here in LA Long Beach, realized there needed to be a barometer, if you will, to track and measure the performance of terminals in a fair and an equitable way. And through that, I got a lot of fabulous relationships with industry leaders, with HTA and outside of HTA, with Wickham Toa, and unilaterally with the terminals themselves. It was really, really fun and kind of a transformative time for me. I kind of learned, if you will, what it takes to kind of build a company from scratch. And then 3 or 4 months ago, we successfully exited the company, and we had a standing working relationship with Michael, PortPro CEO.
What's up, bro? I know you're watching.
And they brought myself and a couple other individuals over, and it's just been really, really awesome to just be a part of what's going on here at PortPro, because it's similar to what we had at GeoStamp in terms of feel, in terms of the energy, in terms of having hardworking, dedicated, willing individuals. And as I mentioned in the front end of this a couple minutes ago, we're really working on a lot of cool things here at PortPro that I think are transformative for the industry, that are really going to help everybody modernize, from the individual owner operator through the trucking company, and then of course up through the big players in the industry. I think everybody's going to see ultimate value in what it is that we're doing here. And I get to work with you, dude.
What's up? I wish I had your last name. It's so cool. I want the last name, like not like that. Not like I want to marry you.
Oh, that's okay. Hey,
Banks is so cool.
Man, I'm not judging.
Walker Banks.
It's like the waspiest name ever. Are you kidding me?
Banks is like, I don't know. That was so random. But I'm just looking at your name right here on my notepad. I'm like, Walker Banks.
It is
Banks.
Oh, I appreciate it. I'll take it as a compliment. But
Louis Banks.
It's
you know, I got that money, man. You know. Oh. Louis Banks.
Hey, I'm still, hey, I still wake up at 5 a.m. I haven't made it yet.
I totally did my own blooper right now. I want your last name, Walker.
Hey, I love it. Leave it in.
Hey, yeah, we are gonna leave it in.
Leave it in. I know, man. I appreciate the compliment, but I have like the waspiest name.
I think it's dope
on planet Earth, man. That's like
you could be a rapper if you wanted.
A rapper?
Just keep your name. You know.
What would my stage name be?
Walker Banks.
You just keep the real name
as
the stage name? You think it's that good? All right.
Yeah.
I'll think about that. Maybe after PortPro, that's what I'll move into. I'll change my career again. I'll go from wanting to be a foreign service officer into a tech startup guy, and then I'll eventually move into rapping.
Yeah, why
Who's
not?
to say I can't?
Why not?
Why not?
I had a question before I go on to the next part.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So with the whole... What made someone think, oh, there's a demand to know wait times, and what benefit was there from knowing the turn times? Like, who said I need this data? Like, and why do you need it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. The program really started with, he was one of the founders of GeoStamp, and again, he ran one of the largest and most successful trucking. He owned one of the largest and most successful trucking companies in Southern California, in California, period. And he successfully exited from that trucking company. Again, fabulous guy, fabulous mentor of mine. There's like 3 or 4 people's opinion on planet Earth that I care about. He's one of them. Extremely generous as well. But so he had a program at his trucking company at Southern Counties where they were measuring how long it was taking for their fleet to get in and out of these marine terminals. And when things got really bad, I think this was, if memory serves, this is long before my time in the industry, but I want to say it was maybe 2009, 2010, 2011, maybe 12, 13, somewhere around there. They were showing all of the terminals this information, trying to establish some sort of working relationship to say, hey, we need to improve the situation together. We need to find a way to work together. And a lot of the terminals, rightly so, basically told him, it's like, hey, you're the only guy with this data. It's hard for us to buy into what you're telling me. It's hard for me to feel that it's credible when it's just you. And at the time, this gentleman, he was also on the board of HTA, and he basically took his kind of thesis, if you will, almost like a core beta product, brought it to his group at HTA, and they evolved it from there. Before it was GeoStamp, I can't remember the company's name, but there was another company that was running the program, and they were measuring data across a plethora of trucking companies in all the marine terminals. And then we took it at GeoStamp one step further. Again, this gentleman who's founded the company, one of the 3 co-founders, we whacked it up to 1,000, right? So we started selling a product to trucking companies to help them measure delays at the terminals, and with that we grew the pool of data so that we could provide kind of an industry barometer, if you will.
Yeah.
And what gets measured gets improved, and if it doesn't get measured, it can't be improved.
Do you think the terminals were in denial about their turn times being horrible at times, and this made them accountable?
That's another really good question. That one's actually pretty tough. I'm going to do my best to answer that in a politically sensitive way. Okay. I'll start with this. So I had a lot of really awesome conversations with terminal operators. YTI, Long Beach Container Terminal, the folks at WBCT, TTI, and who am I missing off the top of my head? TrayPack, those guys really kind of bought into the program, if you will.
Yeah.
They understood that if they were a participant, it would be a more meaningful program. And so they provided us with a lot of guidance, right? They helped us build the fences, if you will, the geo fences, the digital fences, hence the name GeoStamp, helped us build those fences around their facility. They helped us understand the operations of their terminal and where the bottlenecks were, so then we could deploy, some sort of specific measurements to help them improve. I knock on wood, who knows what they said behind closed doors about us, but I like to think that I had a really awesome standing relationship with them. It was very collaborative, and we talked about that a lot, right? It was important for us to measure delays and wait time, if you will, harbor wait time, but we had to make sure that we were an honest broker of information, right? We had to be honest. We had to be transparent about how the data was captured and what it meant to measure. And we had to make sure everybody was involved in the process so that it wasn't ever a weapon against one party. Yeah. And so we were constantly in flux.
I would think because both ends, if both ends become a customer, then it's like, which one do I cater to? How do you find that neutral ground?
It was tough. That was hard to balance. That was pretty much my job, was balancing those relationships, and it was hard in some ways. Now, to answer your question specifically, do I think some of the terminals were in denial? Not necessarily. In denial per se, but again, some of them really wanted to be a part of the program and helped develop the product, helped develop the solution, the thesis around it. Sometimes there were, when maybe a terminal operating system went down, or when the whole Hanjin debacle, it was so long ago, I can't even remember what year that was, 2015 maybe.
The surprise and all those. Yeah. All those cans, who owns them now and stuff like that. Yeah.
That got a little weird because some of the terminals basically were, they took on more capacity than they were over capacity, right? Yeah. And so when those kinds of things happened, there was a little bit of friction where it's like, hey, it's not really our fault that the wait time is really high. Yeah. But that was the whole point of our thesis there, right? It was to be data oriented. It was to lean pretty heavy into statistics. The system basically operated on, regression analyses and statistics, and basically perpetually correcting that to make sure it was fair and that we were an arbiter of truth, if you will.
I want to go back to the denial part. Let me rephrase that and say perhaps what I meant to say was unaware, right? If you're unaware you have a problem, then you're not going to want to fix something you don't think you have a problem in.
Some were. Yes, okay. Some were. Some were. And that's because their internal systems only tracked gate to gate, right? And so they were unaware of what went on, before the truck basically got into their terminal. And that's, that was part of the value add of GeoStamp and why it continues to be a really awesome and successful product and business. Yeah. Is because it is that barometer of truth, and it can kind of help evolve. Whether it be a terminal, HTA, or whomever, it kind of evolves that way of thinking. It helps people think about things they may not necessarily have been aware of, prior to implementing the product.
So I would say you're pretty much a software guy, right?
I like to think of myself as one. GeoStamp was my first real job.
Yeah, that's the credibility right there. Employee one at GeoStamp.
Yeah, it's like, I appreciate that. Yeah, yeah.
So software, what do you think the future looks like for the supply chain with software revolving around it?
Another really good question. You're on it today. I would say a lot of what I'll spill onto the table here, word vomit, if you will, is going to be, from what I hear, from our senior advisor and Mike and Tony and Sarma. A lot of it is going to be kind of that, but with my own little spin on it. Every other industry on planet Earth, more or less, has evolved, has modernized, has adopted technology in really meaningful ways. And I think that's been done in part with supply chain and logistics, but it hasn't completely transformed yet, right? There's still silos of information. There's still a lot of trucking companies that are 10 to 15, even sometimes 20 trucks that are, running their business on, Google Sheets, right? And dispatching through WhatsApp. integrated solutions are there, but they're not prevalent in the industry, right? You don't have solutions kind of talking with one another. That's what we saw at GeoStamp, and what, before the company was acquired, what we started to think about when we got involved in some conversations with some government agencies, which, for what it's worth, they do try to see the picture from a 400,000 foot view, and kind of the whole landscape of what goes on in the industry. So to answer your question more specifically, the industry does, in my opinion, and that's why this is so appealing to me, right? Working at PortPro and being involved in supply chain and logistics, why it's so appealing to me is because that opportunity is still there to develop solutions collaboratively with folks in the industry to really kind of evolve the next set of products that are going to help people run their business. That's one big draw to the industry for me, outside of software and startups, which is fun in its own way. But I do think there's a more collaborative approach with supply chain and logistics than there are in other industries. Like my only other, real world experience is, as I mentioned earlier, is doing some study programs at the UN and getting to meet with some ambassadors and some foreign service officers and really learning what they do in their day to day. It's very much like an us versus them mentality. And I get that, right? Like it's the United States versus the world, right? And if you're an ally, we're going to work with you. But if you're not, there's some friction in that relationship. When I go to like TPM or I go to IANA or some of these other industry events, or I talk to drivers, we had a mobile app at one point at GeoStamp, so I did get to know some drivers at least. Talking with the trucking companies, going to HTA, there's kind of like a we're in it together mentality. My good friend, Weston, he's at Cargomatic. He used to run the show at HTA before Matt. He always, and I've taken this lesson from him and I've internalized it because I think it's important. He always tried to look at the full landscape of the industry and establish these collaborative relationships that really help to take the industry into the next step. Technology is just the piece that we're working on at PortPro, right? And why I like the startup world and why I like supply chain and logistics is because it combines those two ways of thinking, right? It's a collaborative approach. We're in it together. But hey, there does need to be an evolution of the tools. There needs to be new tools that come out, new solutions, new SaaS products that help the industry move in that direction in a collaborative way. Everything from helping out the owner-operator, as I mentioned earlier, to trucking companies and all the way up through to the broker, the forwarder, and the 3PL. Like there's ways to work together. There's solutions that can be developed that will help that evolution and expedite the industry's modernization, if you will. I'm using my buzzwords here, and Michael's going to laugh at me, but that's okay.
But do you feel it's frustrating to see that some tools are already there, and as we're evolving into more tech-based solutions, is it frustrating to see that not everyone wants to use the tools even though they're there? What do you think will happen to them in the long run? It
can be, yeah. And, I won't list names, but, the future is, A, modern technology, and B, it's collaboration. And I think those that, don't adopt a modern way of thinking and develop modern products while also thinking collaboratively, I do think those companies, those products, those businesses may suffer. I do, yeah.
I'm aware that you have business development experience. Can you tell us more about that?
I can, yeah. So as we were talking earlier about being employee one at GeoStamp, and I was just slamming phones, trying to make some sales.
You wouldn't share the pitch, but
okay. I know. I don't want to give away their secrets. No, yeah. I like those guys over there. Anyways, no, I don't think of myself as a salesperson. I have a hard time, asking people for favors. Really, I tried, and I figured it out in some capacity because we grew GeoStamp. But sales is tough. Like again, I got a ton of respect for Daniel. That guy is like masterclass. But here at PortPro and what I kind of transitioned to in GeoStamp was more business development. So, talking with potential partners, talking with potential, collaborative, talking with folks about collaborating in the industry, right? Figuring out where we can work together or what products we can develop that will develop another business unit for us. And then once that business unit is kind of built, then you bring on the sales staff that have real talent in sales, not like a guy like me. And they go cook with gas, right? So they'll take the new business unit, the new product, the new partnership, whatever it is, the developed business, the business development, if you will, and then they'll go sell it. And then on the strategy side, that's all still pretty fresh. I've been, shout out Mike again and Tony and our senior advisor Tim, all great people. We've been working as a group to kind of develop the corporate strategy, right? So what trade-offs are we going to need to make as a company, if any? It's a pretty well-run shop here, so we may not need to make trade-offs, but what products are we going to prioritize and why? What partnerships are we going to prioritize and why? What business units should we build and why? Where should we spend our money? Should we take money? All of those things are both part of the short-term tactical business decisions we need to make, but also part of the long-term corporate strategy, which really, kind of harkens back to, what I studied in the last, gone back to school three times. I just finished up my MBA at George Washington University, and the focus was on entrepreneurship and corporate strategy. And really what they teach you, and not everything in an MBA course can be, transitioned or deployed into the real world seamlessly, but what they teach you is what they teach you about making, again, going back to this, making trade-offs. So
trade-offs. Can you elaborate on trade-off?
So, for example, let's say a business, and I'm going to keep it really generic just so we're not giving away any secrets here. But we've got the option to go down path A, path B, or path C. And maybe we've got enough resources, whether that be capital, whether that be people, whether that be talent, whether that be time, to go down path A and path B, or path B and C, but not all three. So we have to make a decision, right? What trade-off are we making? What are we giving up to go down path A and B?
Pick one, then cancels out the other.
Exactly.
And then you want to make the best choice.
And then thinking about the long-term implications of that, for the future, right? So if we give up C, what does that mean for the business in the future? I'll give you a really good example, and this is like a case study from the MBA program, but it's one that really stuck with me, right?
Okay.
In the corporate strategy class. There's a fast food company in the South called Pals, and their corporate strategy is to only offer. It's a fast food joint. They only offer like 8 things on their menu. You get like a burger, you can get a hot dog, you can get like fries, you get a couple other things, right? In like 40 years of operating, 45 years of operating, they've added one new thing to the menu. And part of their strategy is to train their staff so well on those 8 items that they come out not only perfect every time, but consistent. So every time Lewis or I, you or I go to Pals, for example, we know that hamburger is going to taste and look and feel and be the exact same as it was last time we were there. And so they've got a really dialed in process for training their staff and then also executing on those 8 fast food products.
Yeah.
And they've deliberately given up adding, say, tacos or milkshakes or ice cream or whatever it is that, some executive has said, hey, I think we should add this to the menu. It's like, no, we're making that trade-off. We're not going to put that into our menu because we want to just be super dialed in on these 8 products, on these and our process. And they've also got some, pretty tight hiring procedure. And then in addition to that, their store managers are part owners of that store as I think it's like a franchisee relationship. And they're required to work as like a burger flipper or, like a hot dog griller or whatever for a certain number of years before they can move into like a management role. And they've also got some really dialed in processes for, human resources and their marketing's pretty dialed in. But the trade-off they have made to, scale like McDonald's has, for example, is that they're super cash positive. They've got their profit margin is like, I think it's like in the low 30s, which is just insane, right? For a fast food company. And there's some McDonald's in the country that are operating on a loss. So they're different business models, but that kind of helps illustrate what making a trade-off means, right? Like McDonald's will just add things to their menu because it helps their bottom line, their growth, right? They'll add more stores, they'll add more resources, whatever it is. But Pal's on the contrary, will be very restrictive about what decisions they make. And that's kind of what we're talking about here at PortPro, right? It's like, okay, what is the next thing we should build? And we were joking about it here. I keep pointing over here because he's over here, but we've got the saying now at the company.
Sarma's right there. Sarma's right there.
He is right here. But
Sarma, say hi. Loud.
Hi.
Well, we've got this saying now in the company, and I think Mike coined it yesterday, but or maybe a couple weeks ago. But it's Sarma says, right? So it's kind of like the adage of the company now, right? So Sarma says we should build something. We'll build it, but he's got good reason for building it. Will it help the company's vision and the mission? If the answer is yes, Sarma says build it. If the answer is no, Sarma says don't build it. So that's really that's kind of what we've adopted as well. Again, I'm very new, so I'm the new guy still, but what we're trying to help adopt into the company's framework, right, in terms of a strategy perspective. And again, look, I'm not taking credit for this. I'm just here to help. Michael and Tony and you and Ryan and Sarma and everybody that's been here before me. I mean, seriously, this thing's already pretty dialed in. I'm just here to help at this point. So.
Hey, man, the more the merrier.
Exactly.
And then based on that, it's quality over quantity, and you're here for a reason,
I appreciate that.
So
I'm gonna take that as a compliment too.
Yeah, there you go. AB5. What do you know about AB5?
Good. Oh man, you.
Ching, surprise.
I know. Your blind side there. I'll start with this. I am not going to pretend to know one iota about AB5. At least when you compare me to Matt, who you had in the other day, or some of the HTA folks, or the CTA folks, or some of the men and women I've been fortunate enough to work alongside of the last, half decade, right, through Geostamp and now at PortPro, right?
Yeah.
My take on it is pretty simple. It's here to stay. The law's on the books. Trucking companies, owner-operators, need to work collaboratively, right? That's the messaging I'm going to keep hammering on. Mm-hmm. Need to work collaboratively to figure out what the next step is going to be. Mike gave his presentation at HTA earlier this week, and he talked about the handful of methods that could be a next step, right? You got the two-check method. You've got, trucking companies evolving into brokers. You've got, status quo, which is, as Matt said, that's a real gut check. That's some intestinal fortitude if these trucking companies aren't just going to keep operating as normal. So it's here to stay. And once people understand that, and I think they do, right? Again, I'm not pretending to call anybody out or say I know more than somebody else. I'm just the software guy, right? What there does need to be, though, is products, software products, and business practices behind them. So it's not just the software that's going to help, but software and business practices that need to be deployed into the market that can help these guys make that necessary change, right? So status quo is not the answer, right? That's everybody's like pretty clear on that. Like even Matt warning his members at HTA, like if you guys stick status quo, that you're in deep trouble, right? So that's not the answer. The two-check method seems like there's going to be some gray area with that. There may be some
Uncle Sam's
coming to play. Exactly right. So the solution is, okay, what can we build to stay in business? What can we tap into? What can we integrate with that's going to help me as an owner-operator maintain as much latitude and individualism as possible? And as a trucking company, I'm thinking, how can I serve and retain these drivers? And everything that I've seen, right? I don't know everything, but from what I've seen in terms of software in the industry today, those tools don't exist. And so part of what we're doing at PortPro now, and I know I keep plugging PortPro for your viewers, but I work here, so it's kind of hard not to. But that's part of what we're talking about in our corporate strategy sessions now, right? What can we do to help this dialogue? What can we do that's collaborative? There's my buzzword again there. What can we do that's collaborative and meaningful, tangible, that will eventually evolve into products, if necessary, right? It may not be necessary, but if necessary, that will serve these guys in a meaningful way and enable them to continue to run their businesses as they're used to.
Yeah.
It's hard.
It's hard, in my opinion, because you don't know what to build exactly. Because let's just say it's natural event, like you don't know if it's going to be a hurricane or a storm.
Yeah.
Wait, it's the same shit, but what I'm trying to think is like Noah's Ark. You knew what was coming, so you may have built that, or you build a bomb shelter, or you build a raft, or you build a roof. So how can you build something before knowing how it will be enforced? It'll be kind of like,
it's hard.
I built it for this, but they're enforcing it like that.
Yeah.
And all that, it was for nothing. So
it is hard. You're right. That's actually a really good point. You want to be ahead of it, but how can you be ahead of it if you really don't know, A, what the repercussions are going to be, but B, to your point again, how it's going to be enforced. And that's part of the HTA's issue with the state of California. They say, okay, you've had years to kind of evolve, and you knew this was coming. It's like, kind of not really, right?
No, because they knew it was on pause. So
exactly.
How are we supposed to prepare on something that's paused?
Exactly. And who knows, if the Supreme Court did end up hearing the case, who knows how the law would have changed, or if it would have even been implemented.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think you nailed it. It's hard to plan for something that's not in effect.
Another horrible analogy, like my Weather Channel shit from a few minutes ago. It's like you take maybe a marital status.
Yeah.
If the couple's taking a break, you don't proceed and go file for divorce during the break.
Right.
Horrible.
I'm following you.
But you know what I mean? Like, why would you do that until you know for sure what will happen?
Yeah.
So basically, the time they've had to prepare, I think, is like once the injunction was like no longer gonna be a thing.
Right. Yeah. Once
it's so it's not out the window. Okay, I guess now.
Yeah. You had like 3 days to prepare, right? Yeah.
Yeah, 3 to 7.
Yeah, whatever it was.
Even to get set up, it takes longer than that. So
yeah.
A freaking insurance quote could take up to 2 weeks sometimes.
Yeah.
So
filing with the state of California to start an LLC takes. It's like a multi-week process as well. It's hard.
Yeah.
Some food for thought for you here just came to mind, and this is really what Mike was trying to hammer on in his presentation. I even hesitate to call it a presentation in his moderated debate at the HTA meeting the other night. When we're pitching some ideas, we want to get, as a company, right, as PortPro, we want to get ideas back. So again, that we can kind of work on this problem together. And again, as I said earlier, it may not be software alone that solves the problem, right? There's business practices, there's methodologies that need to be developed or changed or differentiated in some way that kind of help these guys stay in business, right? Trucking companies and owner operators, so that there's no legal friction. Software certainly is where we think the solution is, but to your point, how do you know what to build if you don't know what you don't know yet?
I have a question.
Yeah.
If we're here to help, why do you think it was so quiet in there that day, like when it was time to give suggestions or like speak out?
I think my take on it is that people are nervous. It's part of it is being nervous in a public forum. The other part of it is I think some of these guys have made adjustments already. Like I know of a handful of trucking companies that have moved to an employee model.
Yeah.
And they did it a couple years ago, right? And I know some guys that really trust the relationship they have with their owner operators, and that's a good thing. I think that can be meaningful. Or they're using the 2-check method, but to be perfectly honest with you, I do think, and this is not to be harsh, but I do think some folks are woefully underprepared. The state of California and EDD, EDD, they're going to bring the hammer down hard. And I think it's going to be kind of like 2013, 2014, all over again. Again, I wasn't in the industry then, but I just remember the horror stories, with all the ELD and the tracking issues that came about then, and the misclassification issues, some of them rightfully so. I think that there's going to be some sort of similar fallout now, based on what I've heard. And Matt, to his credit, he's doing his best. He's like, "Look, guys, you got to make some adjustments. You
got to do something.
You got to
do something."
Yeah, exactly.
Does Matt even sleep, man? He's on every network. He's doing all these.
I know.
Trying to tell the world, But
I tell you what, HTA does really well. They hire their freaking CEOs really well because Weston before him. Again, Weston's a good friend of mine. Mm-hmm. He and Matt both just. They pound pavement, man. They do a amazing job of just getting in front of people, saying the right things. They're both insanely articulate, well-spoken, different styles for sure. But both of those guys, I tell you, HTA has done a great job hiring. I'll tell you that much for free. Yeah. I like both those guys a lot.
Carb. Does that ring a bell?
Yeah. Oh, sure. I can talk a little bit about that. And again, most of my thoughts on this are just going to be relayed from what I've heard from Matt and Weston, right? Just in my business and personal relationship with those guys. But from what I heard from Matt, it's going to pull a couple thousand or more trucks off the road, just because of the clean truck compliance, right? So there's some non-compliant dirty air trucks, and Matt, again, he could give you all the exact statistics behind it, whether it be 2017, the truck type, all that stuff is a little foreign to me. But the short of it is they're going to pull several thousand trucks off the road. So you combine that with what's going on with AB5 and the record volumes coming into the port, it's like, whoa. There's a ton of cargo coming in, and they're already, by some measures, not enough trucks to pull it all out of California ports. And now you're going to pull, in a very short period of time, you're going to pull all these trucks off the road, and some owner operators are, they're going to leave the industry, right? Because either they don't want to buy a new truck, they don't want to invest in a $400,000 electric truck, or a hydrogen fuel cell truck, or whatever it is, and because of AB5, they're going to get pushed out as well. So that from an relative, again, I'm not a public policy expert, but from a relative outsider's perspective, like, that's pretty scary, for the supply chain as a whole. But at the same time, that's an opportunity for, transformative startups to make a meaningful difference, like PortPro, but also like, of course, where I came from, Geostamp and others. Like, it is an opportunity because companies are going to be forced. It's not going to be an option. They're going to be forced to derive efficiency. They're going to be forced to find ways to increase their capacity and their throughput that aren't going to be achievable in the way they're doing business today. So again, I'll go back to it. What does that mean? Well, that means an evolution in business practices, but contrary to my answer on one of your last questions, this is more specific to software. You do need better tools. You do need some sort of, Drayage, TMS that's going to enable your dispatchers and your customer service reps to work faster. We are going to need to set up relationships that are going to, integrate with other solutions so that we can, bilaterally share information. That's all going to be really critical. So it's an opportunity for us as PortPro, scary for the industry, opportunity for others as well, scary for the industry. But it is going to force these guys, these trucking companies, and everybody else in the industry to adopt new ways of doing business, because there's going to be trucks pulled off the road, because there's going to be owner-operators that are just going to be, pushed out of the industry because they don't want to become an employee driver, right? You guys are hard-working. I'd say you guys, I know you're not a driver anymore, but, really hard-working people. You guys could do, any other hard-working job and in the entrepreneurial spirit of things, find your way in the world. There's no doubt about that. So the short answer is scary, opportunity, but there are ways out. And as long as we're, again, working collaboratively, I think that's the 18th time I've hit that word today. As long
you
as
really want me to add that, huh? I'm gonna add it on, collaborate every time you say it.
I need like a...
Keep it like a scoreboard.
Yeah, exactly right. A scoreboard. I was going to say a chalkboard. I can keep track of how many times I've said it. But yeah, like you can't build software in a vacuum. You can't, right? You have to have, really talented guys that know what they're doing, like Sarma and the team that we've got. But you also have to, you have to listen to your customers. And you have to listen to people that aren't your customers, right? Even folks that aren't remotely potential customers.
Yeah.
Working with them, listening to what they have to say, hearing their take on what's going on in the industry, that all matters. That all has to be incorporated into, product development. It's really important. And that's why like a chief product officer is so important, right? We've got a lot of great product people here. Kevin, Ryan, Jerry, all those guys are really dialed in. They know product really well. Jerry. Those guys, they lean hard on our customers, but like, hey, what do you think about this? Okay, what about this idea? And that's one of the great parts of working in the industry. What kind of has kept me attracted to it and kept me in it, because I've thought about other things, but ultimately keep coming back to this is, the customers are fun, right? Like they're honest with you. There's no BS, right? Like it's just that it's those kinds of people that work in supply chain and logistics, and that's part of what makes it fun.
We work with them collaboratively.
Exactly right. That's damn right. Yeah. What are we at? 18, 19 now times we've said that?
About how many times have we said Sarma, though?
I don't know.
Like 7?
25 now, probably. He's just laughing at me.
Let's see. Partnerships help the industry.
Yeah.
What comes to mind with that?
It's a good question. Again, for your audience and for your listeners, this is going to sound like a pretty generic answer, but that's just because I'm just kind of trying to keep some stuff under the covers until we deploy it, right? Don't give away the secret sauce. But partnerships are really important. That's part of why I was brought over here. Is to kind of help maintain and establish new partnerships, right? Pitch ideas with, other software providers and not software providers in the industry to talk about what we can work on together, what makes sense, what products can we, tie in with one another, what services can we provide to our mutual customers, what is the value add to the customer at the end of the day, and how can we kind of work together? Because as I mentioned earlier, there's so much siloed information in the industry. Nobody's going to be able to do it all ever. It's just not possible, right? You can't be a drayage TMS, an over-the-road TMS, a terminal operating system, a warehouse management system, a track and trace tool, a vessel visibility tool, a container tracking tool, a data aggregator, and a data analytics company all in one. You just can't, right? Especially not as a software startup. You can buy up all those companies, kind of merge them together, but that's kind of a separate challenge. So partnerships are really important because again, you can't be all of those things. You have to work with other folks in the industry to provide a value add and help the industry evolve, right? That's really why another part of why I wanted to come over here. Like the philosophy of the company is to be helpful to people. It's to help the industry, to help evolve the industry, transform the industry. It's not, just siloed in building a business and making money. There's a million ways to do that. But the vision and the transformative nature of what we're trying to do here leans heavily on partnerships. And that's why it's so critical.
So it's very important for people to adapt and embrace the technology?
Oh, yeah.
Or
For sure.
You don't think it works the opposite, that if they just don't participate, then tech doesn't work? Or will it be the other way around if you know what I mean?
That's a good question.
Like, can they stall it at all if for not just simply not jumping on board, resisting,
In my personal, humble opinion, may not be right, but in my personal opinion, there's no way.
They're just self-destruct?
They'll go out of business. The digital age is... It's here. It's been here for 20 years, right? Think about, I remember my freshman year of college, 2010.
Yeah.
And I remember my roommate had like, I can't even remember what generation iPhone it was, but it was so tiny and kind of cruddy and had the button on the bottom, and the battery didn't last at all. And he had the like real early version of texting on there, and it just wasn't like what it is today. This is like a 4-year-old phone, and it is 6 years removed from, or what is that? 8 years removed from 2010 when I bought it, and it's light years ahead of what that was. And every year the hardware keeps getting better and better, but the software, like if you look at the trajectory of what the hardware's done, they've gone from here to here. The software across all industries, across all products, has gone from here to like through this roof.
Hey man, you're like living on the edge. That phone doesn't have a protective case.
I'm a no case guy, man. No case guy. I've never had a case on any phone. I trust my hands.
You don't feel it slips easier that way?
So, and I'd be lying if I said I've never dropped this phone.
Yeah.
But I'd be telling an even bigger lie if I said I've never cracked a phone because I didn't have a case on it. I have done that twice. But this is 4 years old, no screen, 3 or 4 years old, no screen replacement, no case, no nothing.
Yeah.
Sleek, man. It wasn't designed to be used with a case.
I'm on like number 5.
Are you?
Yeah. But yeah, there were some other reasons how I ended up with no phone. But I won't discuss on here.
It's okay. That's for off the camera. So anyways, the long story short is all companies across all industries, they have to embrace the digital age. They have to. The companies, the trucking companies that we run into that are, still running on Excel spreadsheets or Google Sheets and, text messaging and WhatsApp, like they're still using technology, right? They've gone from, the paper books to, something on the computer.
Yeah.
And this is just the next step in their evolution is adopting Drayage, right?
Yeah.
But again, countries like India and Nepal, Malaysia now and certain parts of, the Eastern Bloc of Europe, they have evolved their entire economies because they've adopted, a digital transformation, right? They've trained their population how to be software engineers and quality assurance people and architects and what have you, and they've really embraced modernity in that way. Mm-hmm. So there's, in my opinion, there's no escaping the evolution of technology. It will come. And it really is as easy as just surfing the wave, right? Technology's so easy to use now. It's not like it was 30 years ago. Like anybody can pick up an iPhone now. Kids are picking up iPhones and they're using them, right? You just pop open apps, the user experience and the user interface is just so easy to use. There's no way anybody gets around it. You can't skirt it. That's just life now.
I just can't understand though why sometimes there's some resistance when in reality we're trying to help drivers and owner operators evolve with the industry so they don't get left behind and someone else dictates how they should do things.
I've got some thoughts on that as it relates to the industry specifically, and also specific to our products, right? Like a Drayage TMS. Actually, I'll start with that. So, a TMS is the operating software. It underpins the entire business operations of a trucking company. They run their entire business on it. So it can be scary for them to move over to something that's kind of new and fresh. Okay. Like their whole staff has used this solution, whatever it may be, for 10, 15, 20 years in some cases. They have their own, their own flow, their own adaptations. Good word, I'll use flow. Their own flow, their own adaptations, their own processes, and change is always hard it's human nature to resist change. And so you're not only doing something that's scary by moving these people from something they're used to, you're also it's a massive change.
Yeah.
And there's risk, right? We don't see it as a risk because it's like our software is so easy to use. You're going to be up and running in a day. It's going to be way better for you. You're going to increase your capacity and your throughput and your operations. You're going to make more money. But they don't see that on the front end. It's just like, oh my gosh, huge change. I got this risk, this other solution underpins my whole business. If something goes wrong, it's a ton of money that I'm going to lose. So we get that. And as a company, we're very sensitive to that. And that's why we have such a strong transition onboarding and customer success team, right? We we understand that, and we really try to massage that process a lot. Now, as far as the industry as a whole is concerned, is kind of the first part of your question here. I just think it's kind of there's not a lot of younger people like you or I that are in the industry that are like running trucking companies. Like our generation, I think you're still a millennial, right? You're 34?
Yeah, 35.
35, you're still a millennial. That's millennial. So I'm 30, right? So we're millennials, right? Like our generation is just now coming into the like senior management level of these trucking companies. And I think time is actually on the side of companies that are, modern software companies like PortPro and others. There's others out there, right? So this conversation relates to marine terminals, brokers, rail yards, whomever, right? Even in government agencies. Our generation is just starting to get to the decision-making stage where they're going to look at old software and they're going to be like, what the hell is this? Like, I can't use this. And I think the industry will evolve as the millennials can kind of move into the senior management role. I just think it's a product of an older generation that they've made a lot of money. They've been very successful, doing things the way they've done them, and trucking and supply chain and logistics typically is a slow to evolve industry. So they've been able to kind of get away with that, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So whatever's been dominant, that, like you said, millennials, and as they phase out, then the new, it's just the cycle of life. Then
the cycle, exactly.
Yeah.
And again, we're sensitive to change. Change is hard for people. It is. It's human nature to resist it. Whether it be a move, whether it be starting a family, whether it be going back to school, starting a new career, like that. Those are all typically very challenging things for human beings. And I think it's the same way for a business that's adopting some new technology that's going to completely upend the way they're doing things. Again, that's why we're super, 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 super sensitive to that.
So how did you know like what you were good at, and you ended up doing this? So
I don't know if I figured that out.
How'd you find it?
I don't think I figured that out yet. I appreciate that though. I'm still working on it. I don't know. I was lucky. I had good parents. They gave me a lot of freedom. I learned some relatively hard lessons early on in life. A lot of, like anybody else, some challenges that you have to overcome. You got to figure out on your own. I lost my dad about 7 years ago, or early on, and I would call that early on in my life. And
sorry to hear that.
Oh, it's okay. Yeah, it was a long time coming, but he was a really important role model for me, and kind of working through that, gave me the chance to kind of grow up a little bit. Even like, I think I'm only good at a handful of things, right? I think talking to people is one of them. Maybe public speaking is another. I appreciate that. Public speaking may be another. Figuring out ways to work together. I'm not going to say collaborative. Ways to work together, I think,
you
is
said
another
it by
one
saying you would not say collaborative.
Damn it, I'm trying to avoid
and now
it,
you made me say it.
And now I made you say it. So now we're at 23 or whatever it is. So,
Sarma.
I think, that I hate to use the word opportunity, but, my dad was a well-known guy in the sailing world. So we had like hundreds of people come to his service, like hundreds. And, we threw his ashes overboard, off the coast of Orange County. And it was special, but I had to go up and public speak in front of those people. And with GeoStamp, I was constantly like, especially when I was employee one, and it was before we were really in a growth stage. I was just, hey, Walker, you got to go talk to the terminals. Hey, you got to go present at HTA. Hey, you got to go fly to, Chicago and talk to, the Illinois Trucking Association. You got to present. You got to talk to all these people. And I don't think I was good at that until I went through that. So the combination of having to grow up and mature with, through, losing my dad, but also really having to like be the professional face of a startup, GeoStamp, I think those two things really kind of enabled me to, develop the very few skills I have in it. Look, I'm no software engineer. I'm no CTO. I'm not even a product guy. I just, I fit in the in-between space as well. I think that's probably the best answer.
Did it ever hit you like, oh, this is me? Like, okay, embrace it?
Not yet. I don't think so.
No?
I just kind of wake up every day and try and figure it out. I read a lot. I read a ton, so I think I'm looking for something maybe that'll maybe switch the light bulb on. I'm still not sure. Maybe I'll never figure it out. I kind of like not figuring it out. I not to talk about myself. I actually hate doing that, but I received a compliment from a really good friend of mine. This is like 10 years ago.
What did Weston tell you?
Yeah, Weston does pitch me some compliments, but no, this is before I knew Weston as a like college friend of mine. And I think he meant it as kind of like a jab, like I don't know. We were out, I don't know, having a couple beers at the bar or something. Who knows? But
there's some truth to the jabs.
There's some truth to the jab. So he said, Walker, he's like, you don't really fit in anywhere, but you kind of fit in everywhere. And I took that as, I know, exactly, right? I took that as, like, I don't have an exact defined persona, right? But I can get along with everybody so that I can kind of fit in. I can kind of fit in everywhere.
Walker Banks, MC Banks. Right?
I love it. Anyways, I hate talking about myself, so that's,
Talk about yourself
that's
some
the
more.
gist of it. Where do we begin?
Because the part of what we do here on the podcast is the drivers come on and we get to hear about their personal stuff too.
Oh,
If
really?
they're willing
Okay.
to share, get to know more about
all
them.
right. I don't feel so bad
That way
about
we
it.
don't put like just all like titles, like this,
Yeah.
Yeah. Because people see it like the trucker, like
Yeah.
we show that they're hustlers, they got families, they got goals, they got ambitions and all that.
Yeah.
So like, share a little more about yourself.
Okay, yeah.
That book, favorite book.
Oh, that's a tough question. The favorite one I've read recently is a business book called 0 to 1. It's a Peter Thiel book, and he was one of the co-founders of PayPal. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Sarma.
Yeah. And he's been an angel investor in a lot of Elon's companies, including Tesla, and I think he was an early angel investor in Uber. And anyways, the guy's really tremendously successful. He worked for the Trump administration for a little while, I think, as like a senior economic advisor. I think that ended in kind of crashed and burned with that, but I digress. He's a really smart guy, and the book it's not that long. And it's all about how to take a company from 0 to 1. It's all about startups. He talks about sales and marketing, how to raise money, what the right things are to say to potential investors, what it takes to get a company from, again, 0 to 1, all the hard work. And a lot of it is some really cool stories about his early days as a founder. And PayPal is what made him famous, but he also helped start a company called Palantir, which is basically like a giant data analytics company for the Department of Defense. I think is their biggest customer. But anyways, he's built several of these companies, taken them public or sold them, and I found his insight, really kind of cool. Anyways, that's my favorite book I've read recently. My favorite series of all time is the Aubrey Maturin series. So it's depending on your count, it's a 20 or 21 book series. The author, Patrick O'Brien, actually died while writing the 21st book. Like mid-sentence, he died. Like the book has like 90 some odd pages in it, maybe over 100 pages in it, and literally like mid-sentence, book 21 is done.
And they printed it like that and just
they did.
ended it there?
Yeah, they just call it 21 because the book wasn't named either. But,
oh, wow.
So have you ever seen the movie Master and Commander?
No.
This is Russell Crowe and Paul Bettany.
No.
So that movie is an amalgamation of the first 20 books. Mm. And basically the book it takes place in the early 1800s. So in 1802 is when the first book starts, and then you go all the way through like 1821. And you basically the books are about friendship, more or less. But there's this naval captain, Captain Jack Aubrey, and you follow his career from when he's a lieutenant all the way up to when he makes admiral. And his best friend is this spy / surgeon. He speaks like 7 languages. That's Stephen Maturin, and he recruits him to come be a surgeon on the ship. And they become really good friends. They're into music together, and the books are full of action, like ship battles, like cannonball fights and sword fights and musket fights, and There's duels, and they fall in love, and they get sent to all these cool places all over the world. So they go to the Galapagos, they go to Brazil, they go to India, they go to Australia, and 20 books later, these guys are like basically brothers, and they have all these life or death situations. But the book taught me a lot about those books plural, taught me a lot about what it means to be, a good quality friend. And given my sailing background, which I grew up sailing, I did it kind of on a semi-professional level for a couple years on the World Match Race Tour. There was a good connection there too. So it's got sailing in it, it's got some history in it, which I love history, and it's got teaches you a lot about friendship. So were those books
fictional, or they were?
That's actually a good question. So they're loosely based on actual history. There was, I can't remember the guy's real name, but the Captain Jack Aubrey, one main character, is loosely based on like a real life captain in the British Royal Navy in the early 1800s.
But they add a little twist to it.
Yeah, after like book 6, the history runs out, and he basically takes full liberty. So at some point it does become, entirely fiction. After I think it's book 6 or 7, I can't remember. It's been a few years since I finished them. It becomes entirely fiction. But there is some actual real history in it, like real battles, things like that. And it's cool.
So you can learn something from fictional books, because at that point you're being influenced by someone else's imagination to a degree, and it's not really like that 0 to 1 where it's experience, and then if it makes sense, I guess you run with it, or what?
Yeah, that's my philosophy is personal philosophy is to kind of always be learning. I think that's why I've gone back to school so many times. It's exhausting to talk about school. I'm so glad to be finished the third time. Oh my God! But
you still got life to go through. That's another school.
I got to start focusing on life and not so much on schoolwork. But and I've got if I have any of my friends that are going to see this podcast, I'm sure they will. Some of them, some of them work in finance in New York City or in Chicago, and another one lives up in Seattle. There's some of my best friends in the world. A couple of them live overseas, but they're all like such smart professionals, and all they read is like business books. So I was at a bachelor party like a couple weeks ago with all of them, and a couple months ago now actually, and we were talking about like all the books that we read and all the business podcasts that we read, and I was telling them about the Aubrey Maturin series, and they're like, "Oh, how do you have time to like fit in like books about fiction?" And I'm like, sometimes you got to enjoy life a little bit. Like, you can't always be reading books like 0 to 1 or, the Rich Dad Poor Dad's a famous one, or, books about investing or how to, business books. You can't always be reading that. I love the Aubrey Maturin series because it taught me something that's a little more intangible, how to be a good friend. All right.
What's the difference with that one? Also, How to Win Friends and Influence People?
That is another one of my favorite books.
Yeah.
That book is excellent. I recommend that book. There's 2 books I recommend to everybody. One of them is How to Win Friends and Influence People. Mm-hmm. The other one is Never Split the Difference. It sounds like you know how to win friends and influence people.
Do I?
Yeah.
Probably. But I know how to lose them too.
Don't we all? Hey, believe you me, everybody makes mistakes. But
I gotta write that one down. The one you said. What's the last one you said?
Never Split the Difference.
There you go.
So that I can't remember the author's name. It's gonna bug me. Maybe it'll come to me by the end of the podcast. But
Google will take care of that.
Yeah, no worries. Anyways, the author was the FBI's senior most international hostage negotiator. He was the head of hostage negotiation at the FBI. And the book is in part about his story, but the last, I want to say 10 chapters are all dedicated on how to be a better negotiator. And he walks you through all these scenarios and walks you through the different signs to look for. Basically, in his eyes, everything in life is a negotiation. And it is. I agree with that. But he...
Oh, I think I heard of that guy.
He runs a company called the Black Swan Group.
Okay.
Shout out Black Swan Group. And that book has transformed, that guy has transformed the way I think about business, the way I think about buying cars, the way I think about having a conversation with my fiance, the way I'm going to have a conversation with my kids, with colleagues, with anyone, about anything for that matter. And his whole philosophy is negotiating doesn't have to be like a tit for tat. It doesn't always have to be, cut down to brass tacks.
Yeah, it could be me and you walking down the street and
Exactly.
you cross the street because you want to just avoid me, or I do
Something
the same.
like that, yeah. I think I would cross the street.
That's a
if I was
negotiation, right? Like, that's a negotiation
walking.
itself.
It is. Yeah, that's a good example. Everything in life is. And that book I love. I recommend that one to everybody. As far as like business books go and books on negotiation go and things like that. Yeah, 0 to 1 and Never Split the Difference and How to Win Friends and Influence People. Dale Carnegie. That book is timeless. I think it was, when did he write that? The 50s? Something
I don't
like
know,
that?
it's old, but also the Think and Grow Rich one, which I've never read through completely.
I haven't read that one either, but I've heard a lot of people recommend that to me. Yeah. I love reading. I do. I read, I think I listen to about one audiobook a week, and I'm about a book every week and a half now.
Okay.
I read, since my dream was to be a naval officer when I was a kid, I read a lot about, I read a lot about those guys. So like, No Easy Day, it was written by one of the SEALs that was on the Osama bin Laden mission. I love that book. Really cool story. There's another one by Admiral McRaven, who I think he's now chancellor. I think he might have retired, but I think he's still chancellor of the University of Texas system. David Goggins is one of my favorite people. Oh, I love him. That book is great. Yeah, Can't Hurt Me, another fabulous book. And have you? So speaking of podcasts, have you listened to his podcast with Joe Rogan?
No, I have not. But the way he did his book, he did it like a podcast style on the Audible.
Oh yeah.
So
that was great. That guy is, people give him shit, but he doesn't take it. And he's just himself. Like, he's the most raw, I think, public figure I can think of. He is who he is. He doesn't take any BS. And that book was really, like, just to hear his story, you're like, oh my God, like, if he can do that, like, it just, it's like, well, what can I do? I don't want to leave any stone left unturned like he did.
Well, it's that feeling that that you got to do something, and then even though you hear people like him talk about it, it's like you don't take action sometimes, and it's like, So I think for me, the hardest part is just starting, I guess, and then once you start,
that is the hardest part. Yeah.
Tomorrow. Today is someday.
So when you started the podcast,
yeah.
So what? I'm sure you thought about it a long time before you started it. What was the deciding moment that you said, all right, no more talk. Today's the day. I'm starting it.
Well, for no more license. I lost my license, and then I was like, I gotta do something fast, and then that's what I did. I did that, and then 3 episodes in, then Mike reached out and they offered to sponsor it.
3 episodes in, really?
Yeah, I was doing it in the garage.
Oh my gosh, I don't think I realized that.
I did my first one with myself, of course, because I didn't have a guest. So
yeah.
In the garage, yeah. That one kind of breaks it down about everything like I've been through and at the ports in my life and the whole sobriety thing, and so yeah. And then fast forward, we're here, 60 episodes, 61.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of practice because the whole public speaking thing, so many years trucking, I'm speaking for myself, so many years trucking, and it's like I kind of enjoyed my alone time,
Yeah.
And then, so I've been working on my people skills, you could say, or whatever. So public speaking is not the best, so I think it helps that you mentioned your experience when you kind of were not thrown at it, but it kind of like you had to just jump in.
I had to just do it, yeah. I think it's a skill. I think it can be learned. I think it can be taught. So? Yeah, I do. I think some people are always going to be like you watch like you watch like a Barack Obama or a Bill Clinton, even like a Tulsi Gabbard, she was the Democratic rep from Hawaii. I've read, Tulsi doesn't have a biography yet, but I've read their biographies, Bill and Obama's, and I've watched a lot of I've actually watched them public speak to try and help my own public speaking skills. Like when those guys walk into a room, they're ultra charismatic. There's always going to be people that just light up a room, that everybody gravitates to, that just kind of control the dynamism, the aura, if you will, of a room, and they can do it on a scale of a stadium full of 100,000 people.
How could you tell though if it's a real charisma or if it's a front?
I think you can tell.
Yeah.
I think you can tell. Okay. Yeah. I think you can tell. I think it's instinct that would enable you to kind of sniff that out, fish it out, right? Like some people are just just kind of fake, right? And some people are really kind of charismatic and genuine. You kind of get it. So who am I? I don't want to step on any political landmines here, but there's you can think of there's plenty that come to mind, right?
Yeah.
That are like, okay, tripping over my own sentence here, but there's plenty of politicians that come to mind that are public servants today, where you see them on CNN or Fox News or MSNBC or in the Wall Street Journal, and you're like, that guy's kind of fake,
exactly.
Yeah.
But
I didn't like the reason I looked into, I read so much about Barack Obama and so much about Bill Clinton. And Ronald Reagan is another one that were just like public speaking pros. Like those guys, it all, whether it was authentic or not, who really knows? But to the masses and to the people that know them and that wrote their biographies, their charisma came off as very genuine, and their public speaking skills were enhanced by that kind of natural swagger, if you will, that natural charismatic aura. And that's why I read so much about them. So I do think it's a learned skill. For going back to our original discussion.
Yeah,
totally.
Maybe the crowd can also steer it in a way. Like if the crowd is feeling you kind of open up more. If
big time.
If you feel resistance, it's kind of brief.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah. You have to listen to you have to jive with the audience. You have to. If they're giving you some negative feedback, you got to adjust. If it's positive, you got to keep going. That when I was new to, when I did like my first big HTA presentation for GeoStamp, right? This was early on. I flew to Chicago to present to ITA or Texas at the Texas Trucking Association. I'd be so nervous about like what I'm going to say and what the presentation is going to look like. I would just like be so focused on the content. I would basically just like read through it, and I wouldn't look up at the audience at all. I wouldn't see what the reactions were, and by the end of it, it's like, okay, damn, I got my message across, but it's like, were they listening? It's hard for me to tell. There wasn't like an engagement. Yeah, it's hard. It's tough, but it is, again, I do think it's a learned skill. And even the best public speakers on planet Earth, they have their bad days. Like stand-up comedy is a good example, right? Like even the best stand-up comics are gonna try some joke that just
Am I right? Am I right? No one says shit.
I know, you're like, oh, okay. Well, I guess that joke didn't land.
Did you ever like read some stuff and then you forgot what the hell you talked about in mid-sentence, like blacking out during the discussion? That's happened to me. I'm like, what the fuck did I say? Like, I hope I did good.
I don't know. I'm gonna have to watch the replay and see if I lost my train of thought in the podcast.
Yeah.
But I don't think so. Maybe I miss it. Who knows? I'm sure it's happened, and I've just it just flies out of my head, and I miss it. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, I'm out of stuff here. I don't know if there's anything you would like to add. Because
did we cover an hour?
We did an hour and a half, I believe.
Did we really? Dude, time flew. I appreciate you having me on. This is the first podcast I've done, and I'm just grateful. You're a cool guy. I like working with you. It's been fun so far. I'm excited for the journey we've got in front of us.
All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it.
Next episode of the Containeroz podcast. Peace.